Marcus Rodriguez walked through the bright glass doors of St. Mary Children's Hospital for the first time as their new security guard. The morning sun painted golden streaks across the colorful lobby walls decorated with cartoon animals and rainbow murals. He adjusted his navy blue uniform and checked his watch. It was exactly 7:30 in the morning on a Monday in September. The hospital smelled like cleaning supplies mixed with something sweet that reminded Marcus of his childhood. Maybe it was the scent of the juice boxes he could see stacked behind the reception desk. Everything here was designed to make children feel safe and happy. The walls were painted in soft blues and yellows. Tiny chairs were arranged in circles around low tables covered with picture books and wooden toys. Marcus had worked security jobs before, but never in a place like this. His previous job was at a shopping mall where his biggest worry was teenagers skateboarding in the parking lot. Here at the Children's Hospital things felt different, more important somehow. Every person walking through these doors was either a sick child or someone who loved that child very much. The head nurse, Mrs. Patterson, showed Marcus around the building. She was a kind woman in her 50s with gray hair pulled back in a neat bun. She explained his duties as they walked through the different floors. Marcus would patrol the main lobby and waiting areas. He would help families find their way to the right departments. Most importantly, he would make sure everyone who entered the hospital belonged there. During his first week, Marcus learned the rhythm of the hospital. Early mornings brought parents carrying sleepy toddlers for blood tests. Mid-morning was busy with scheduled appointments. Lunchtime was usually quiet except for the emergency cases. Afternoons brought more families, and the waiting areas filled up with the sound of children playing and sometimes crying. Marcus noticed that most children were afraid when they first arrived. They would cling to their parents' hands and look around with wide, worried eyes. But the hospital staff knew exactly how to help them feel better. The nurses would kneel down to talk to the children at their eye level. They would show them colorful stickers and promise treats after their appointments. Soon enough, most kids would relax and even smile. By his third week, Marcus had started to recognize the regular families. There was Mrs. Chen, who brought her twin boys for their weekly checkups. The boys were born early and needed special care, but they were growing stronger every month. There was teenage Sarah, who came for physical therapy after a car accident. She walked with crutches but never complained, and always thanked Marcus when he held doors open for her. Then there was the little girl who caught his attention. She arrived every Tuesday and Thursday morning at exactly 9:15. Her mother would park their old blue Honda in the same spot near the main entrance. The woman looked tired and worried as she gathered papers from a manila folder before they walked inside together. But it was the little girl who made Marcus curious. She appeared to be about 7 years old with dark curly hair that bounced when she walked. She always wore clean clothes that were perhaps a size too big for her small frame. Her shoes were old but polished. Someone was taking good care of her, even though money seemed tight. What struck Marcus most was how quiet she was. In 3 weeks of seeing her twice each week, he had never heard her voice. Not once. She would sit perfectly still in the waiting area chairs while her mother filled out forms at the reception desk. Her hands would rest folded in her lap like she was much older than 7. Her dark eyes would watch everything happening around her. Other children would play with toys or talk to their parents, or sometimes have small meltdowns when they got scared. This little girl just observed everything in complete silence. She seemed to notice details that even Marcus missed during his security rounds. When their eyes met across the lobby, she would give him a small wave. Her expression was always serious, though. Not unfriendly, but watchful, alert, like she was thinking about something important that she could not or would not say out loud. Marcus found himself looking forward to Tuesdays and Thursdays just to see if the quiet little girl was okay. By his 6th week at St. Mary Children's Hospital, Marcus had settled into a comfortable routine. He knew which coffee machine made the best cup in the morning. He knew that Mrs. Williams at the front desk always had extra tissues for crying children. He knew the names of most regular patients and their families. But the quiet little girl with dark curls remained a mystery. Marcus began to pay closer attention to her during her Tuesday and Thursday visits. What he discovered made him more curious than ever. The little girl did not just stay silent. She had created her own special way of talking to the world around her. When she needed to tell her mother something, she would write on small pieces of paper. Marcus watched her pull a tiny notebook from her jacket pocket during one visit. She wrote something down with a pencil that was almost too short to hold. Then she tapped her mother gently on the arm and handed over the note. Her mother read the paper and nodded. Then she wrote something back and gave it to the little girl. They were having a complete conversation without making any sound at all. Marcus had never seen anything like it. Most children her age would be chattering non-stop about everything they saw and heard. The little girl also used her hands to communicate. She would point to things she wanted or needed. She would shake her head yes or no when adults asked her questions. She would hold up fingers to show numbers. Marcus realized she understood everything people said to her. She simply chose not to speak back with words. During one Thursday morning visit, Marcus noticed something that made his stomach feel uneasy. The little girl was watching a man who sat across the waiting room. The man was alone, which was unusual. Most adults in the children's hospital were there with their own kids or grandchildren. Marcus looked at the man more carefully. He appeared to be in his 40s with brown hair and a neat beard. He wore a blue jacket and dark pants. He carried a leather briefcase like he worked in an office somewhere. But he had no child with him, and he seemed to be watching the other children instead of reading or looking at his phone like most waiting adults did. The little girl had noticed this too. Marcus could tell because she kept glancing at the man when she thought no one was looking. Her normally calm expression showed signs of worry. She shifted in her chair and moved closer to her mother. She pulled out her notebook and wrote something quickly. When her mother read the note, she looked up and searched the waiting room with her eyes. She spotted the man in the blue jacket, and her face became tense. She wrote something back to her daughter. The little girl nodded and tucked the notebook away, but she kept watching the strange man. Marcus decided to walk past the man during his next patrol round. As he got closer, he could see that the man was indeed staring at the children in the waiting area. When Marcus appeared in his line of sight, the man quickly looked down at his briefcase and pretended to be busy with papers inside. This behavior made Marcus feel suspicious. Adults who belonged in a children's hospital had clear reasons for being there. They were focused on their own child or their appointments. They did not spend time studying other people's children. Marcus continued his patrol but made mental notes about the man in the blue jacket. He was tall and thin. He had no wedding ring. His clothes were clean and expensive looking. His briefcase appeared to be real leather. He looked like someone who had money and a good job. So why was he sitting alone in a children's hospital waiting room, watching kids he did not know? The little girl seemed to have the same questions. Every few minutes she would look over at the man. When he looked back at her, she would quickly turn away and focus on something else. But Marcus could see that she was keeping track of where the man was and what he was doing. After about an hour, the man stood up and walked toward the exit. He did not check out with the reception desk. He did not speak to any staff members. He simply left the building and got into a dark car in the parking lot. The little girl watched him go. Then she wrote something in her notebook and showed it to her mother. Her mother read it and looked worried. She glanced toward the exit doors and then back at her daughter. They seemed to be having a serious conversation through their written notes. Marcus realized that the quiet little girl might be seeing things that other people missed. Her silence made her invisible in a way. Adults did not pay attention to children who were not making noise, but she was watching everything and everyone very carefully. He wondered what she had written in that notebook about the strange man in the blue jacket. 3 weeks had passed since Marcus first noticed the man in the blue jacket. The strange visitor kept returning to the hospital on different days and at different times. Sometimes Marcus would spot him on Monday mornings. Other times he would appear on Wednesday afternoons or Friday evenings. But he always did the same thing. He would sit alone and watch the children. Marcus had started keeping track of these visits in a small notebook he carried in his uniform pocket. He wrote down the dates and times when the man appeared. He noted what the man wore and where he chose to sit. The pattern was becoming clear, and it was not normal. On a busy Thursday morning, the waiting room was more crowded than usual. A flu outbreak had brought many worried parents with their sick children. The reception desk had a long line of people holding insurance cards and appointment papers. The children play area was full of little ones coughing and sneezing while their mothers tried to keep them comfortable. Marcus was helping direct families to different departments when he felt someone touch his arm very gently. He turned around and saw the quiet little girl standing beside him. Her mother was nowhere in sight. This was the first time she had ever approached him directly. The little girl looked up at Marcus with her serious dark eyes. She held a folded piece of white paper in her small hand. She offered it to him without making any sound. Her expression was more urgent than he had ever seen it before. Marcus knelt down to her level so they could be face to face. He took the paper from her and carefully unfolded it. The handwriting was neat and careful, like someone much older had written it, but he could tell it came from a child because some letters were backwards and the lines were not perfectly straight. The note said something that made Marcus' heart beat faster. It read, "The man in the blue jacket has been watching kids for 3 weeks. He is not supposed to be here. I have seen him before at my old school." Marcus looked up from the paper and stared at the little girl. Her face was pale but determined. She pointed across the waiting room with one small finger. Marcus followed her gaze and spotted the familiar figure in the blue jacket sitting in a corner chair. The man was doing exactly what the note described. He was watching the children and their families with intense focus. The little girl tugged on Marcus' sleeve again. When he looked back at her, she pointed to herself and then made a gesture like she was writing. She wanted him to know that she had more information to share. Marcus pulled out his own pen and a piece of paper from his security logbook. He wrote, "Do you know this man?" and handed the paper to her. She shook her head no and wrote back, "He was at Lincoln Elementary School before the bad thing happened. Then they moved him away, but now he is here." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. Lincoln Elementary School was across town from the hospital. If this man had been removed from a school for some kind of bad behavior, it could mean he was dangerous to children. And now he was spending time in a place full of sick and vulnerable kids. The little girl wrote another note. This one said, "I tried to tell the grown-ups at school, but they did not believe me because I could not talk out loud. My mom says sometimes bad people look for places where kids are scared and parents are worried because it is easier to trick them." Marcus realized that this 7-year-old girl had been trying to protect other children, just like she was trying to protect them now. Her silence was not a weakness. It was making her invisible so she could observe dangerous situations that adults were missing. He wrote back to her, "Thank you for telling me. I will make sure he cannot hurt anyone. You are very brave." The little girl smiled for the first time since Marcus had known her. It was a small smile, but it reached her eyes. Marcus stood up and looked across the waiting room at the man in the blue jacket. The man seemed to sense that he was being watched because he looked directly at Marcus. For a moment their eyes met. The man quickly looked away and started gathering his things. Marcus knew he had to act fast. The little girl had given him information that could save other children from harm. He could not let this opportunity slip away. He reached for his radio to call for backup while keeping his eyes on the suspicious man. The quiet little girl had found her voice through written words, and her message was about to change everything. Marcus pressed the button on his radio and spoke quietly into the device. He did not want to cause panic in the waiting room full of families and children. His voice was calm but serious as he called his supervisor, Mr. Johnson. "Security to main office. I need backup in the lobby waiting area. Possible suspicious person. Please respond quietly." Mr. Johnson's voice came back through the radio within seconds. "On my way, Marcus. Do not approach until I arrive." Marcus kept watching the man in the blue jacket while he waited for help. The man had noticed Marcus talking on his radio and was now looking nervous. He kept checking his watch and glancing toward the exit doors. His hands were shaking slightly as he pretended to read papers from his briefcase. The little girl had moved back to where her mother was sitting at the reception desk. but Marcus could see that she was still watching everything that happened. Her mother had finished filling out forms and was now reading a magazine. She had no idea that her daughter had just helped uncover a potentially dangerous situation. Mr. Johnson appeared in the lobby within 3 minutes. He was a tall man in his 60s who had worked hospital security for over 20 years. He had gray hair and kind eyes, but Marcus knew he was tough when he needed to be. Mr. Johnson had trained Marcus when he first started the job. Marcus walked over to meet his supervisor near the information desk. He spoke in a low voice so no one else could hear their conversation. "There is a man in a blue jacket sitting in the corner. He has been coming here for weeks with no apparent reason. A reliable source tells me he was removed from Lincoln Elementary School for inappropriate behavior around children." Mr. Johnson looked across the waiting room and spotted the man immediately. His experienced eyes took in every detail. The man was now sweating despite the cool air conditioning. He was checking his phone repeatedly and seemed ready to leave at any moment. "We need to approach him carefully," Mr. Johnson said. "If he runs, it will scare the families here. Let me talk to him first while you block the exit route to the parking lot." Marcus nodded and walked casually toward the main entrance. He positioned himself where he could see both the suspicious man and the doors leading outside. If the man tried to run, Marcus would be ready to stop him. Mr. Johnson approached the man in the blue jacket with a friendly smile. He carried a clipboard like he was doing routine security checks. "Good morning, sir. I am Mr. Johnson, the head of security here. Can I ask what brings you to our hospital today?" The man looked up with wide eyes that showed fear and surprise. He had been caught off guard and was not prepared with a good answer. I am waiting for someone," he said. His voice was higher than normal, and he was speaking too fast. "Who are you waiting for?" Mr. Johnson asked politely. "Maybe I can help you find them, or let them know you are here." The man stammered and could not give a clear answer. He said different names and changed his story twice in less than a minute. Mr. Johnson had heard enough lies to recognize them when he heard them. "Sir, I am going to need to see some identification," Mr. Johnson said. His voice was still polite, but now it carried authority. "Hospital policy requires all visitors to check in at the front desk and provide a reason for their visit." The man started to argue, but Mr. Johnson was not going to be fooled. He had dealt with suspicious people many times before. He knew when someone was lying and when they might be dangerous. Marcus watched from his position near the doors. He could see that other families in the waiting room were starting to notice the conversation. Some parents were pulling their children closer to them. The atmosphere in the lobby was becoming tense. The man finally reached into his wallet and pulled out a driver's license. Mr. Johnson examined it carefully and wrote down the information on his clipboard. Then he asked more questions about why the man was at the hospital and who he was supposed to meet. Every answer the man gave made him sound more suspicious. He claimed to be waiting for his nephew but could not remember the boy's name or age. He said he had an appointment but could not say with which doctor. He insisted he belonged there but could not explain why he had been coming for weeks without ever checking in properly. Mr. Johnson made a decision. "Sir, I am going to have to ask you to come with me to the security office. We need to verify your story and make sure everything is in order." The man stood up quickly, and his briefcase fell to the floor. Papers scattered everywhere, and Marcus could see some of them had pictures of children printed from the internet. The man tried to gather them up, but Mr. Johnson had already seen what they were. "Marcus, leave your position and call the police immediately," Mr. Johnson said firmly. "This situation requires law enforcement." Marcus pulled out his cell phone and dialed 911. He explained the situation to the dispatcher and requested officers to respond to the hospital right away. The man in the blue jacket was now surrounded and could not escape. The little girl watched from across the room as the dangerous man was finally stopped. Her silent message had worked. The adults had listened to her warning and taken action to protect all the children in the hospital. Her courage had made the difference between safety and danger for everyone there that day. 2 police officers arrived at St. Mary Children's Hospital within 10 minutes of Marcus' emergency call. Officer Sarah Chen and Officer Mike Torres had worked together for 5 years and were experienced in handling sensitive situations involving children. They entered the hospital quietly to avoid frightening the families in the waiting areas. Mr. Johnson met them at the main entrance and quickly explained what had happened. He showed them the scattered papers with children photos that had fallen from the suspicious man briefcase. The officers' faces became serious when they saw the printed images of kids from various schools and playgrounds. The man in the blue jacket was now sitting in the hospital security office with Marcus watching him carefully. He had stopped trying to explain his presence and was demanding to speak with a lawyer. His nervous behavior had been replaced with angry silence. Officer Chen took charge of questioning the suspect while Officer Torres began collecting evidence. They asked hospital staff to review security camera footage from the past several weeks. What they discovered was disturbing and confirmed the little girl observations. The cameras showed the man had been visiting the hospital regularly for almost a month. He always came alone and always positioned himself where he could watch children without being noticed by their parents. He had different arrival times and used different entrances to avoid creating a pattern that security might detect. Most troubling was footage showing him following families to the parking lot on 3 separate occasions. He would watch which cars they got into and appeared to be writing down license plate numbers. This behavior suggested he might be planning something more dangerous than just watching. Officer Torres ran the man identification through police databases and found several concerning results. His real name was David Mitchell, and he was 42 years old. He had been fired from 2 different school districts in other states for inappropriate behavior around students. He had also been questioned, but never charged in connection with missing children cases in those areas. The investigation team called Lincoln Elementary School to verify the little girl's story about him being removed from there. The principal, Mrs. Rodriguez, confirmed that David Mitchell had worked as a substitute teacher for only 3 days before being dismissed. Several students had reported feeling uncomfortable around him, but the complaints were not taken seriously at first. Mrs. Rodriguez explained that Mitchell had a way of singling out quiet children who seemed vulnerable or scared. He would offer them special attention and try to gain their trust when other adults were not watching. The school had let him go when a teacher noticed him having inappropriate conversations with students during lunch breaks. The principal was shocked to learn that Mitchell was now spending time at a children's hospital. She immediately agreed to provide any records or witness statements that might help the police case against him. Meanwhile, Marcus had returned to the waiting room to check on the little girl and her mother. He found them sitting together near the reception desk. The mother was holding her daughter's hand and looked worried about all the police activity in the hospital. Marcus approached them carefully and knelt down to speak with the little girl. He pulled out a piece of paper and wrote, "Thank you for being so brave. You helped protect many children today." The little girl smiled and wrote back, "I was scared, but I remembered what my therapist taught me. Bad people count on kids being too afraid to tell adults what they see." Her mother read the note and looked surprised. She had not known that her daughter was aware of the dangerous situation that had been developing in the hospital waiting room. She wrote her own message and showed it to Marcus. "My daughter has been through trauma before. She notices things that most people miss because she has learned to be very careful about her safety." Marcus realized there was much more to this little girl's story than he had understood. Her silence was not just shyness or fear. It was the result of previous experiences that had taught her to be watchful and protective of herself and others. Dr. Williams, the hospital child psychologist, arrived to speak with the family about what had happened. She explained that children who have experienced trauma often develop heightened awareness of potential danger. They become expert at reading adult behavior and sensing when something is wrong. The little girl had been using these skills to monitor the hospital environment during her regular visits. Her observations had been systematic and accurate. She had noticed patterns that trained security personnel had missed because she was invisible to the predator who was focused on avoiding adult attention. Officer Chen returned to speak with Marcus about the investigation. The evidence against David Mitchell was strong enough to arrest him on charges of stalking and possession of inappropriate materials. The police would also investigate his connection to other incidents involving children in the area. The hospital administration was grateful that the situation had been discovered before Mitchell could harm anyone. They planned to review their security procedures and train staff to better recognize signs of predatory behavior. As the police led Mitchell away in handcuffs, the little girl watched from the safety of her mother's arms. She had found a way to use her voice through written words, and her courage had made all the difference. Her silent message had saved other children from a dangerous person who thought no one was paying attention to his actions. After the police took David Mitchell away, the hospital felt safer, but Marcus had many questions about the brave little girl who had helped catch him. Dr. Williams, the child psychologist, offered to explain the situation to Marcus and the hospital staff so they could better understand what had happened. Dr. Williams invited Marcus to join her in a quiet conference room away from the busy waiting areas. She carried a thick file folder that contained information about the little girl's case. Her expression was kind but serious as she prepared to share a difficult story. The little girl's name was Emma Santos, and she was 8 years old, not 7, as Marcus had guessed. She had been coming to the hospital twice a week for 6 months to receive therapy for selective mutism. This condition meant she could speak normally but chose not to talk in certain situations because of trauma she had experienced. Dr. Williams explained that Emma had been a happy, talkative child until something terrible happened at her previous school 18 months ago. A trusted adult who worked there had been secretly hurting children for years. Emma had been one of his victims, but she was also the only child brave enough to report what was happening. The man had threatened Emma and told her that no one would believe her if she told anyone about his actions. He said adults always trusted other adults more than children. He warned her that speaking up would only cause trouble for her family and the other kids at school. Despite these threats, Emma had found the courage to tell her teacher what was happening. Her report led to an investigation that discovered the man had been abusing many children over several years. He was arrested and sent to prison because Emma was willing to speak the truth even when it was scary and difficult. However, the experience had changed Emma in ways that were hard for others to understand. She began to worry that other dangerous adults might be watching her and the children around her. She started paying very close attention to adult behavior, looking for signs that someone might be planning to hurt kids. The stress of being a witness in a criminal case and dealing with her own trauma eventually caused Emma to stop speaking out loud in public places. She could still talk normally at home with her mother, but everywhere else she communicated only through writing and gestures. Her mother, Maria Santos, was a single parent who worked 2 jobs to pay for Emma therapy and medical care. She had moved them to a new neighborhood, hoping a fresh start would help Emma heal. But the move had been expensive, and they were struggling financially while trying to rebuild their lives. Dr. Williams continued explaining that Emma's selective mutism was actually a sign of how smart and strong she was. Her brain had found a way to protect her from further trauma, while still allowing her to help protect other children. She had become an expert observer who could spot dangerous behavior that other people missed. Emma had developed what psychologists call hypervigilance. This meant her mind was always scanning for potential threats in her environment. While this was exhausting for her, it also made her incredibly good at noticing when something was wrong. The therapy sessions at the hospital were helping Emma learn that not all adults were dangerous and that she could trust certain people with her safety. Dr. Williams was teaching her techniques to manage her anxiety and gradually rebuild her confidence in speaking out loud. Marcus learned that Emma had recognized David Mitchell because she had seen him at Lincoln Elementary School during the brief time he worked there as a substitute teacher. Her memory for faces and behavior was unusually sharp because of her traumatic experiences. When Emma saw Mitchell at the hospital, she immediately understood that he was a threat to the other children there. She had tried to warn her mother, but Maria was focused on filling out insurance paperwork and dealing with their medical appointments. Emma realized she needed to find another way to protect the kids around her. Dr. Williams said that Emma's decision to approach Marcus with her written warning showed tremendous growth in her healing process. For months she had been afraid to trust any adults outside her family. Choosing to share her concerns with Marcus meant she was learning to recognize safe people who would listen to her and take action. The therapist explained that children like Emma often become protectors of other kids because they understand how terrible it feels to be hurt and not believed. Emma had suffered, but she was using her experience to prevent other children from going through the same trauma. Marcus felt amazed by Emma's strength and intelligence. She was just 8 years old, but she had shown more courage than many adults. Her silent communication had been more effective than all the security cameras and trained personnel at the hospital. Dr. Williams said that Emma's case showed why it was so important for adults to listen carefully to children, even when they could not or would not speak out loud. Sometimes the quietest kids had the most important things to say about their safety and the safety of others around them. Emma Santos had found her own powerful way to use her voice and protect her community. The police interrogation room at the downtown station was small and windowless with gray walls and a metal table. David Mitchell sat across from Detective Lisa Murphy and Detective James Rivera, who specialized in crimes against children. He had been silent for 2 hours, refusing to answer questions about his activities at St. Mary Children's Hospital. Detective Murphy placed a thick folder on the table between them. Inside were photographs taken from security cameras showing Mitchell at the hospital on multiple occasions. There were also printouts of the disturbing images found in his briefcase and records from his previous jobs at elementary schools. Mitchell had asked for a lawyer, but continued to insist he had done nothing wrong. He claimed he was just a man who enjoyed being around children because they reminded him of happier times in his own childhood. His explanations sounded rehearsed and false to the experienced detectives. Detective Rivera opened the folder and spread out several photographs. These images show you at the hospital on 12 different occasions over the past month. You were not visiting any patients. You were not meeting with any doctors. You were watching children and following their families to the parking lot. Mitchell shifted uncomfortably in his chair, but maintained his innocent expression. He said he had been considering bringing his sick nephew to the hospital for treatment and was just checking out the facilities to make sure they were good enough. When Detective Murphy asked for the nephew name and contact information, Mitchell could not provide consistent details. He gave different ages for the boy and could not remember which medical condition required treatment. His story fell apart under questioning. The detectives showed Mitchell photographs of license plates he had been seen writing down in the hospital parking lot. They had traced these numbers to families of children who attended 3 different elementary schools in the area. None of these families knew Mitchell or had any connection to him. Detective Rivera explained that following children and collecting information about their families was stalking behavior. Combined with Mitchell's history of inappropriate conduct at schools and the disturbing materials found in his possession, the evidence pointed to serious criminal intent. Mitchell finally became angry and started shouting that he was being treated unfairly. He claimed that children made up stories about adults they did not like, and that everyone was too quick to believe their lies. His outburst revealed his true feelings about children and their right to be protected from dangerous adults. Back at the hospital, Emma Santos and her mother Maria were meeting with Dr. Williams to discuss what had happened. Emma had written several pages of notes describing everything she had observed about Mitchell during his visits to the hospital. Her detailed observations included descriptions of how Mitchell would position himself to watch children without being noticed by their parents. She had seen him take photographs with his phone when he thought no one was looking. She had watched him follow families outside and write down information about their cars. Dr. Williams was impressed by Emma's ability to document suspicious behavior so thoroughly. Her notes showed that she had been conducting her own investigation for weeks, trying to figure out if Mitchell was dangerous and how to warn the adults around her. Emma wrote that she had been afraid no one would believe her again, just like what happened at her old school. She explained that she had tried to tell her mother about Mitchell, but Maria was always busy with appointments and paperwork during their hospital visits. The decision to approach Marcus with her written warning had been very difficult for Emma. She had spent days watching Marcus to decide if he was someone she could trust. She noticed that he was kind to children and their families. She saw that he took his job seriously and paid attention to what was happening around him. Emma wrote that she had been scared Mitchell might hurt other children the way she had been hurt. She could not live with herself if she stayed silent, and something bad happened to kids she could have protected. Dr. Williams explained to Maria how brave Emma had been to speak up despite her trauma and fear. The therapist said that Emma's actions showed she was growing stronger and learning to trust safe adults with important information. Maria felt proud of her daughter, but also guilty that she had been too distracted to notice Emma's concerns during their hospital visits. She promised to pay better attention to Emma's observations and feelings in the future. The police investigation revealed that Mitchell had been planning to escalate his behavior from watching to direct contact with children. He had been studying the hospital schedule to identify times when security was lighter and families were distracted by medical appointments. Detective Murphy told hospital administrators that Mitchell had been preparing to approach vulnerable children whose parents were busy with paperwork or appointments. He had been looking for opportunities to offer help or comfort to scared kids when their guardians were not paying attention. Emma's silent vigilance had prevented Mitchell from moving forward with his dangerous plans. Her written message to Marcus had stopped a predator before he could harm any children. The confrontation between law enforcement and Mitchell had ended with his arrest on multiple charges including stalking, child endangerment, and possession of inappropriate materials. The case would go to trial where Emma's courage would once again help protect other children from a dangerous adult. Her silence had become the loudest voice in the room, speaking truth and demanding justice. 3 weeks after David Mitchell arrest, the story of Emma Santos' bravery had spread throughout St. Mary Children's Hospital and beyond. The local police department wanted to honor both Emma and Marcus for their quick thinking and courage in stopping a dangerous predator. Police Chief Robert Anderson planned a special ceremony at the hospital to recognize their heroic actions. He believed it was important to show the community that children's voices mattered and that adults should always take their concerns seriously, even when those concerns were communicated without words. Emma felt nervous about receiving public attention for what she had done. She was still working with Dr. Williams on rebuilding her confidence and learning to trust new people. The idea of being in front of a crowd made her anxious, but she also felt proud that her actions had protected other children. Dr. Williams helped Emma prepare for the ceremony by practicing with her mother, Maria. They wrote out responses to questions people might ask so Emma would be ready to communicate her thoughts and feelings. The therapist explained that being recognized as a hero instead of just a victim could help Emma continue healing from her trauma. On the day of the ceremony, the hospital main lobby was decorated with colorful balloons and banners. Families of patients had been invited along with hospital staff, police officers, and local news reporters. Emma wore her favorite dress and carried a small notebook in case she needed to write messages to people. Chief Anderson spoke first, explaining how Emma's careful observations had helped identify a serious threat to children in the community. He praised her courage in reaching out to Marcus, even though she was afraid and unsure if adults would believe her warnings. Marcus received a commendation for his professional response to Emma's concerns and his quick action to involve hospital security and police. The chief noted that Marcus had shown excellent judgment in taking a child report seriously and following proper procedures to investigate the suspicious behavior. When it was Emma's turn to be recognized, she walked slowly to the front of the room holding her mother's hand. Chief Anderson knelt down to her level and presented her with a special certificate recognizing her as an honorary junior detective for the police department. Emma wrote a short message on her notebook and handed it to the chief to read aloud. Her note said, "Thank you for believing me. I hope other kids will know that adults will listen when they try to tell us about dangerous people." The audience applauded, and many people had tears in their eyes. Emma smiled more brightly than anyone had seen since she started coming to the hospital. For the first time in months, she felt proud of herself instead of afraid and worried. A reporter asked Emma's mother, Maria, to explain how she felt about her daughter's actions. Maria said she was amazed by Emma's strength and intelligence. She explained that Emma had been through terrible experiences, but was using what she learned to help protect other children from similar harm. Dr. Williams spoke about the importance of recognizing that children who have experienced trauma often develop special abilities to notice danger and keep themselves safe. She said Emma's case showed that selective mutism did not mean a child had nothing important to say. The ceremony had an unexpected effect on Emma's healing process. Being recognized as a hero rather than just a victim helped her see herself in a new way. She began to understand that her experiences had given her special skills that could be used to help others. Over the following weeks, Emma started speaking in whispers during her therapy sessions with Dr. Williams. The positive attention and recognition had helped her feel more confident about using her voice in safe situations with trusted adults. Marcus continued his friendship with Emma during her regular hospital visits. He would always stop to check on her and her mother. Emma began writing him notes about her progress in therapy and her gradual return to speaking out loud. The hospital staff had learned valuable lessons about paying attention to quiet children who might be observing important things about their environment. They developed new training programs to help employees recognize signs of suspicious behavior and take children concerns seriously. Emma's case became a teaching example in Dr. Williams' work with other traumatized children. She showed them that staying silent could be a form of strength and that there were many ways to use their voice to protect themselves and others. The recognition ceremony had been covered by local news, and the story spread to other communities. Parents began teaching their children about Emma's example and encouraging them to speak up when they noticed adults behaving inappropriately around kids. Emma Santos had become a symbol of hope, showing that children could recover from trauma and use their experiences to make the world safer for others. Her journey from victim to hero was inspiring other young survivors to find their own ways to heal and help their communities. The little girl who had been silenced by fear had found her voice again through courage, recognition, and the support of adults who truly listened to what she had to say. 6 months after the ceremony at St. Mary Children's Hospital, Emma Santos' life had changed in wonderful ways. She was now speaking out loud during most of her therapy sessions with Dr. Williams. Her voice was still quiet and soft, but it was growing stronger each week as her confidence returned. Marcus Rodriguez had been promoted to head of security at the hospital after his excellent handling of the Mitchell case. He used his new position to create better safety protocols and train staff to watch for suspicious behavior. But his favorite part of the job was still greeting Emma during her Tuesday and Thursday visits. Emma had started attending a new school where the teachers and counselors knew about her past experiences. They worked with her mother Maria and Dr. Williams to create a safe environment where Emma could continue healing while getting a good education. The school had a special program for children who had experienced trauma. Emma met other kids who understood what she had been through. Some of them had also learned to be very careful about watching adults and noticing when something seemed wrong. Emma discovered that she was not the only child who had developed special skills because of difficult experiences. Her new friends had also learned to read people's faces and behavior to keep themselves safe. Together, they formed a group that Dr. Williams called the Guardian Angels. The Guardian Angels met once a week to talk about their experiences and practice healthy ways to stay safe. They learned the difference between being appropriately careful and being so worried that they could not enjoy being kids. Emma found that helping other children made her feel proud and strong. Marcus often visited the Guardian Angels meetings to teach them about safety and to listen to their concerns. He had learned that children who had been through trauma often noticed things that adults missed. Their observations had helped the hospital staff identify 2 more suspicious visitors who were asked to leave the premises. Emma had also started writing stories about her experiences. Dr. Williams helped her turn these stories into a children's book about finding courage and using your voice to help others. The book was published by a small company that specialized in helping young trauma survivors share their stories. Emma's book was called The Girl Who Wrote Her Voice. It told the story of a little girl who learned that there were many ways to communicate important messages, even when speaking out loud felt too scary. The book helped other children understand that being different was not being weak. Schools and hospitals around the country began inviting Emma to visit and talk about her experiences. She would read parts of her book and answer questions from children and adults about staying safe and speaking up when something seemed wrong. During these visits, Emma's voice grew stronger and more confident. She discovered that she had a gift for helping other children feel brave enough to report dangerous situations. Her story gave them hope that adults would listen and take action to protect them. Maria Santos was proud of how far her daughter had come in her healing journey. She had also learned important lessons about paying attention to Emma's observations and taking her concerns seriously. Their relationship had grown stronger through all the challenges they had faced together. The criminal trial of David Mitchell had ended with his conviction on multiple charges related to stalking and endangering children. Emma's testimony had been crucial in securing the conviction. She had spoken clearly and bravely about what she had observed, making sure that Mitchell could not hurt other children. Marcus kept in touch with Emma even after her therapy sessions at the hospital ended. He would send her notes about his work, and she would write back with stories about school and her new friends. Their friendship had started with a written message and continued to grow through their shared commitment to protecting children. The hospital created a special award called the Emma Santos Award for Courage. It was given each year to a child who showed exceptional bravery in protecting themselves or others from danger. Emma was invited to help choose the recipients and present the awards at annual ceremonies. Dr. Williams continued to use Emma's case as an example in her work with other traumatized children. She showed them that healing was possible and that their experiences could be turned into strength that helped their communities. Emma had become a symbol of hope for children who had been hurt but were learning to heal. Emma Santos had learned that silence did not mean she had no voice. Her written words had been louder than shouting. Her careful observations had been more powerful than any weapon. Her courage had saved other children from harm and inspired a community to listen more carefully to what children were trying to tell them. The little girl who had once been too afraid to speak had become a voice for children everywhere. Her journey from trauma to triumph showed that even the quietest person could make the biggest difference when they found the courage to share what they knew with adults who truly cared about keeping children safe. Emma's new beginning was just the start of a life dedicated to protecting others and showing the world that every child deserved to be heard, believed, and protected no matter how they chose to communicate their truth.